tough conversations can pop up anywhere, whether it's in the sword alley, the pickup cab, or over supper at the kitchen table. And let's be honest, navigating those talks can leave everyone involved feeling frustrated, unheard, or stuck. That's why I created a free guide, Handling Hard Conversations, 3 Steps to Creating Space for Clarity, Connection, and Mutual Respect. In this quick and practical resource, you will learn how to pause and ground yourself before your emotions run wild, validate both yourself and others, building trust, and how to ask honest questions that lead to real connection. These 3 simple steps can help you communicate better and keep your relationships, whether it's with your family, your crew, or your spouse, strong and steady, even on the hard days. Download your free copy today and start moving more smoothly through those hard conversations with confidence. The link is in the show notes, so go grab it now. Here's to drawing good movement.
I'll carry you, you carry me, we'll help each other through it. Come on and see, good movement draws good movement.
Welcome to Good Movement Draws Good Movement, the podcast where farmers, ranchers, and rural folks can grow relationally through awareness, understanding, and effective communication. Hey, it's T. I'm your host, and I, along with my guests, will be covering topics related to drawing good movement. Things like self and social awareness, brain science, positive psychology, extending grace, and so much more. We'll share tools that can help you understand why you are the way you are, why others are the way they are, and how you can use that to step out of self-told lies with grace and compassion to draw good movement in conversations, relationships, and life in rural America. Let's go draw good movement. Welcome back to the Good Movement Draws Good Movement podcast. Today we have a guest, and her name is Calli Thorne. Calli is a keynote speaker, global leadership trainer, a mindset coach, and a multi-business entrepreneur. She's married to her husband, CJ, and they have 3 young children. She grew up on her family's farm and ranch in Northwest North Dakota, and today they operate multiple enterprises, including a backgrounding feedlot and a cow-calf operation. They recently purchased a USDA federally inspected beef processing plant to sell beef directly to consumers and to increase custom slaughter options for ranchers in the region. They operate a full-scale farm-to-fork business and are proud to be the 4th generation and raising the 5th on their family's land. Calli is also a certified member of the John Maxwell leadership team, specializing in personal and professional development, including conflict resolution, communication, mindset impact, and understanding behavioral styles. She also offers mental health first aid certification classes and a variety of masterclasses, workshops, and trainings that assist others in expanding their perspectives to live life better. I want to say first, welcome, Calli.
Thank you. I'm always like, oh, that's a lot. I should shorten that. But what do you leave out?
You do a lot. So you and I met 3 years ago in person at the Rural Rooted Retreat.
Mm-hmm.
And I was absolutely fascinated by all the work that you do, especially the mental health first aid training. And so we're going to talk more about that. But first, can you tell us a little more about you, aside from the formal bio, and how you got where you are?
Yeah, I think you always have to start with first things first, right? I think one of the fun things that's a little different about our operation is my husband did move up to our place. So he's actually from South Dakota and saw a lot of opportunities up in Western North Dakota. Obviously, that oil boom has been happening up here for the past 10, 15, 20 years. And so he moved up here, started working in that. And then, so I figured, I guess I better come home since he went to my place. And yeah, it seems like every day we're juggling something. The kids now, they're 13, 11, and 7. And so because we're full-time business owners doing multiple enterprises, they're usually with us doing one thing or another. So we're at the beef plant one day, or I'm on the road speaking somewhere, or we're at home tending to everything that needs done there. So yeah, it's fun. It's an adventure, I always say.
So you do the mental health first aid trainings. How did that piece enter the picture?
So, and this is why I'm always like, oh, let me check my memory. But it was many years ago, actually. And I'm trying to remember if I was still in extension. So when I graduated college, I have a degree in animal science, minor in ag business. I always tell kids, don't stress about what you're going to go into. I mean, unless you want to be a doctor or a lawyer and need specific training, just do something and carry on with your life because life will change and evolve as you go along. So I can't remember if I was still working for NDSU Extension at that time or if I was out of it. But long story short, there was a training that came about and it was called Mental Health First Aid. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. I mean, I've had first aid and CPR training probably three different times in my life for work. Or I remember I took it one time in college because I needed more credits. So I was like, oh, I should take first aid again. And so I thought this is interesting and different. And I think kind of deep down too, you always hear stories. Like you never fully understand mental health. So I was kind of like, I wonder what they're actually going to teach us. You know, I had a friend in college that struggled. You hear about things all the time, right? Whether it's family, whether it's yourself or neighbors or friends that have struggled with depression or anxiety or, suicide, all of those things. And so I thought I should just go check out this training. Long story short, I thought the training was fabulous. And so shortly after, I decided to get certified myself so I could teach the class and help more people become certified within it themselves as well to actually take the training. So that's kind of how I got into it. Attended one myself and realized how great it was. And I wanted to be able to provide that for other people.
So what all do you teach? Obviously, we're not going to do a mental health first aid training on this podcast, but in summary, give us the Cliff's Notes. If we attended one of your trainings, what would we learn?
Yeah, there are multiple segments. So it's actually, we can't cover quite the whole thing here, but because it is a day-long class. So it's 7-8 hours when we sit down and do it, which is interesting because a lot of times I'll get pushback on that, whether it's companies, teams, organizations, whatever. And people will say, well, I don't have an entire day to set aside for a training. And because I do a lot of coaching, obviously I can give them another thought or ask them the question like, hey, you can look at it that way, right? I'm fairly busy too myself. And so you could think, how could I take an entire day and do this training? Another thought might be though, it's really just one day out of the entire year, out of my entire life. And knowing the impact that it could have on myself or my family or people within the community, people that I don't even know, if I'm just willing to take this just one day and get this valuable training, is it worth it then? And I mean, that's the whole point of coaching too, is like, oh, here's where my brain is going. I don't have time. I can't take it. And the other thought you could have is like, it's just one day. So we cover a lot of things in that day. I mean, starting with kind of looking at how do we take care of ourselves. Self-care is actually a portion of it. But then a big portion as well is realizing a mental health first aider's job is to just recognize signs and symptoms. So we'll even go through a variety of mental health challenges that we see here, especially in the US, from anxiety, depression, PTSD, bipolar, schizophrenia, even eating disorders. So we run through that. That's one of the segments, just gaining a little bit more understanding about it. But then realizing, okay, my job, like I said, is to name and notice. Like I see something is off. What are those signs? What are they doing differently? Especially when it's friends or people that you can pick up on those things, which probably anybody who's listening to this could do that. When a friend stopped showing up for coffee or something, or when you haven't seen a neighbor for a really long time, or when somebody seems to be acting a little off or a little quieter or whatever, right? There's this whole list of things that we can recognize about someone that might be off. And that's kind of our sign to maybe have a conversation. And that's the big part of what we do. We notice, but then what's our job is to say something, to have a conversation. And we teach people how to do that, of course. So the whole class, I mean, I think part of the reason people don't want to take a whole day to do the training too is it doesn't sound that fun. Who wants to go learn about mental health for an entire day but it's there's interactive things, there's video, there's activities and lots of different things, manuals, workbooks included. And so there is always lots of good feedback from it.
So you talked about the pushback about, I don't have time to take a whole day. Do you also run into pushback just in general with the way that society and especially rural America views mental health?
I probably don't have a lot of people say it to me, but I know they're thinking it too. So for one example, so a lot of times people have options. I have done it before where chambers, for example, or somebody within the community heads up a mental health first aid training and it's open to the public. So anybody can come, anybody can sign up for it. But then I do a lot of private ones too, where a company will hire me and their employees will go through the training. And so I was doing that one time. And the downside of that is people are kind of either forced or highly encouraged to attend it, right? If their employee's paying for it and they're like, hey, this training is this day, we really highly encourage you, AKA you better show up to it. And so I've done those before. And one time the room was filled with men. And this was like the roads department crew for the county, a county road department crew. So it was all men in the room who probably would have rather been out on their blades or doing different things that day. And I did. I walked in the room kind of jokingly and I was like, you guys look like you're really excited to be here today. And they kind of look at me like, she's not funny. And I was like, oh dear, this is going to be a rough crowd. But honestly, I know what the class holds and I know that I can make it fun. And I've got lots of stories to tell along the way. And by noon, when we were taking a break and grabbing lunch, I had one guy come up to me and he almost kind of whispered and mumbled it, but he said, this class is way better than I expected it to be. So it's kind of like, well, there's one example. I know you're not the only one who is thinking like, really, this is something that people do not. Now we have to go to mental health first aid. But the one thing I say to a lot of people is, and I'm looking at it actually in the room that I'm in, there's a first aid kit. And I'm kind of like, I wonder how often that gets used. Like I said earlier, I've taken first aid CPR 3 times and I've never had to use it. I mean, truly and thankfully, I mean, yes, the kids come to the house bleeding sometimes, but I handle the situation. I've never had to, had a bloody car wreck I've showed up to or never had to give chest compressions or things like that. And when I talk to a big audience too, it's the same thing. 98% of people don't ever have to use first aid CPR, thankfully. But I tell you what, I think everybody should I think it should be switched around that everybody should have to have mental health first aid, because I guarantee people, even I talk about this in the class, that you will use this training every single week, if not every single day, for yourself or for your kids or a neighbor or somebody that you run into that you don't even know out in town. So it's just, the value is there. And I've seen it time and time again.
Ooh, I do not at all disagree that it maybe should be flip-flopped.
Mm-hmm.
I think both are very important, but like you said, like every day, there's the potential to use mental health first aid.
We actually had this conversation recently because obviously we're big in oil country here, and I spoke on a panel there about mental health along with some other professionals. And that was one of the higher up discussions, was just, we have so many trainings out here for those who are in oil field, working for big oil field companies, and the number of things that they have to do and be certified in and all of these things. Yet what is one of the number one things in agriculture, oil field construction? Mental health challenges. And yet it still isn't a mandatory training as of yet that people have to take it. And I just think of just the number of lives that would be different. You know what I mean? Not even accounting for the number of lives that would be saved, but the number of lives that would just be different in a much better way because they've had this training.
Yeah, I agree. This should be mandatory.
I think people don't realize how much better life could be with the training. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be people who suffer from depression and anxiety, or maybe nobody in your family has any mental health challenges. Like, I still think everybody should have this training because it does impact everybody. I can't remember. Oh, I should have my notes with me, but the percentage is very high. I think it's over 50% of people at some point in their life will face a mental health challenge. I mean, and that doesn't mean that they even have to go see a doctor or get on medication or any of that, but it is an extremely high percentage that people will face a mental health challenge at some point in their life. And so how do you show up to that? I mean, we talk about the stigma a lot, which is one of the issues.
Yes, like even if you don't have a mental health diagnosis or an illness, mental health is still important. Like mental well-being, emotional well-being is still important. And when you were talking about how you do some trainings with the oil field workers and you think that that should be mandatory, I also think that should be mandatory because I'm sort of the mind that whatever business we're in, whether it's farming, ranching, oil field, the people are the foundation of that business. And if we aren't taking care of ourselves and our mental and emotional well-being, then we can try all we want to make other improvements, but it doesn't matter if we're not taking care of ourselves.
Yeah, it's kind of like the glass half full. It's really hard to, at some point, help other people when you're just running out of your own glass, right? Your own glass is running empty. And I think sometimes, especially in our industries, it's easy to be like, oh, I have to play superwoman or I have all these things to do and I just have to keep going. And it's like, you might feel like you can for a while until all of a sudden there is a traumatic event and it is all gone. And you look back and you think about how, wow, it's been a long time since I've actually taken care of myself. And I do think that is one thing we talk about in the class is how important it is for everybody to have this understanding, because I think a lot of times we think, and I tell the people in the class this, I haven't ever been diagnosed with something. You know, I can say I've never experienced actual depression or anxiety and some of those things. And actually those two diagnoses are things that I actually talk about in the class, because I stress to people, can you feel anxious and not be diagnosed with anxiety? Yes. And I stress that because I also think there's a fine line of us pushing mental health too far and not having a full understanding of it. You know, can I feel depressed? Can I feel sad? Can I feel overwhelmed and not be diagnosed with depression? 100%. You know, so just kind of understanding the difference and not self-diagnosing. That's a big thing in the class that we talk about is just because, like, it's just like first aid CPR. Just because you're certified in that doesn't make you a doctor. Like, you still need to call the ambulance and get them to the appropriate help. And it's the same thing with mental health. This doesn't make you a therapist or a counselor or allow you to run around diagnosing people. You simply have much more of an awareness and you know what to do in situations and what to say to get people help. And sometimes it's, hey, let's go grab coffee. Do you want to visit? And that might be the help that somebody needs. So like I was saying, just because I've never been diagnosed with something, I always ask people, do you think I work on my mental health though? And it's kind of this pause of, okay, yes, everybody has to work on their mental health in one way or another. I'll often ask that in the class of what brings you joy? What's fun? What do you enjoy doing? Like if I asked you that, T, what would you say? What are some of the things that you enjoy and fill your cup?
Oh, walks outside in the nature, like listening to nature, spending time with, well, actually, one thing that really it combines these two things that I'm going to say, walks in nature and spending time with my family. I love evening chores because we all go out together and we let the dogs out and we bring the horses in or feed the rabbit or whatever. We're hanging out together outside. And I love that. That's very cup filling for me.
Those are good ones. You know, it's funny, whenever people list these things, we actually do part of this in our class. And it's funny because what fills some people's cup is like the exact opposite for somebody else. You know? So like, I might say, I enjoy going for a run. And some people look at me, I can see it in their eyes like, oh, that would cause more stress and anxiety than I would ever want. But sometimes people are talking about grabbing coffee with friends. Like, I love doing that, or I like taking a trip with my family, or I like going hunting and fishing, all the things. And then I ask people, when is the last time you did that? And I am guessing you are very good at your things. I love to get outside and do a walk every day too. But there are people that you can see by the look on their face, they don't take that time for themselves very often. You know, they're putting everything else above themselves. And I think that's the thing. I don't know. That's a whole nother topic, but just talking about, hey, you have to know your priorities and values. Otherwise, your day will fill with everything else that ended up on your plate, or clearly that you said yes to, or you allowed somebody else to put on your schedule with you saying yes. So I think there's just a lot in that of recognizing what's important to me, what do I value, and I know that I should take care of myself. And so what are one or two little things that I could start incorporating to make sure my cup stays filled?
That's such a common theme, though. And I think that a lot of people feel selfish by taking that time to do the things that refuel them, refresh them, recharge them. But I want to challenge that to like flip it on its ear a little bit. That's not selfish, that's selfless, because you're taking the time to refuel you, and then you can better give to your family, your friends, your job,
Mm-hmm.
without harboring resentment and then, all the things that come with that.
Well, and it's funny, and this is probably like more the life coach in me, is it's kind of like that's a thought, right? If somebody feels selfish, they have a thought around that, as in, I should be doing this, or never should you be shooting on yourself, right? It's kind of like pause and think about, where did that thought come from that I shouldn't be doing this, or that it's selfish? And it's like, maybe it's a generational thing that, well, my mom never took time for herself. She was always taking care of us, or helping dad on the farm or ranch, or working, or this XYZ, right? And it's funny because I can honestly say I'm probably at a point where I don't feel guilty. If my walk has to be during the middle of the day, or I happen to do this or that, or grab coffee with a friend, okay, once in a while I do feel guilty about that, but I shouldn't. It's like, I know how much it fills my cup and other people's too. And I guess that's kind of the fun of an entrepreneur, is you learn that you get to call the shots of when you're working and when you're taking time for yourself to do other things.
Yeah. So going back to what you said about where that thought came from, like a question that I ask when I have certain thoughts or perspectives come up is, what happened that shaped my perspective in that way?
Yep. Like, ask yourself, why do I think that way? And recognizing that it's a thought. I'm always big on, it's not a fact, right? There's a lot of people that like to go back to circumstances or things like that and blame it. Well, my mom did this, or this happened, or whatever. Anything that's factual, but it's like, you still get to decide what you want to think about it, about that situation or whatever came about. And I think we do. We just have so many thoughts and habits hardwired in our brains at a certain age. And it's like, I took that for fact that farmers and ranchers never get to take a vacation, right? Or I took it for a fact that we have to work an outside job to have health insurance. Or, right, everybody could think of one right now of all these thoughts that we've believed over the years. And it's like, wait a second, I'm not believing that anymore. That was just a thought. It wasn't a fact.
And whether or not that message was explicitly said verbatim, or that's what we perceived.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we picked up because that was what was modeled.
Yep. That's what I always say, more is caught than is taught. So what did we watch growing up? What did we see, therefore begin to believe?
Okay, so you talked about sometimes you go into businesses and like the oil field, the road department. What other groups do you work with? Do you go to rural communities and do like a community event? What types of groups do you all work with?
Mm-hmm. It's kind of a variety. I've had even schools or communities reach out. And like I said, some are more private, where they want it just for that targeted group, their employees, or different communities will bring me in and they'll open it up, which is fun that way too, because then you have teachers, doctors, veterinarians, bankers. You have everybody and anybody at those trainings. To be honest, a lot of times at mine too, I will have a lot of health, if not mental health professionals show up, because they're sometimes not always getting this training, or they want to check it out too to see how relatable it is. And it happens so often that they end up in the room, which is fun, because then they have a lot that they can add as far as information. I've even done like Transova Genetics, for example. If you've heard of them, big genetic company, global, they had me come down to Iowa and do a couple private trainings for their employees. And I know we talked oil field earlier, but I knowing that how mental health affects people in agriculture and what our statistics look like in that industry, sometimes I'm like, everybody should have this. It's so clear to me the difference that it would make. And especially people in those industries, because they're the ones who are visiting. I mean, anybody that's in sales in agriculture, at the very least, these companies should be having this training because they're the ones doing the ranch visits, let alone they're the ones sitting down with multiple generations. And I joke with them. I'm like, who do you talk to? Do you talk to the grandpa or the dad or the kid that just graduated from college? I mean, and just there's a lot that goes into that, which I'm on both sides of it with all the leadership training that I do, plus the mental health training. And it's just like, how do we keep bridging this gap to help people on all ends, all sides of it?
Well, and you also have a really unique perspective because you're in agriculture to reach these rural communities, businesses. And like, I think that's a great idea about having the reps in the training because they see and sometimes maybe we're a little too close to our loved ones to see it. Whereas an outsider comes in and they're like, oh, this energy, I'm picking something up here. So that's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
If someone listening to this episode would like to set up and schedule a mental health first aid training class with you, how do they go about that?
Yeah, they can reach out. I do have a website. They can go to CalliThorne.com. I always say Calli. So no E on Calli, but E on Thorne. And you'd be able to find my information there and stuff. And it really just comes down to, scheduling. What's fun is sometimes companies, obviously, if they're hosting it for their employees, they'll foot the bill. Sometimes people find sponsors to help cover it and stuff, but we can discuss all those logistics and kind of figure it out. But yeah, it's pretty simple. It comes down to, hey, when do our schedules align and how do we do it? Key part is I am under mental health first aid's rules because of what they have in place. It is a good rule, but I can only do 30 people in a class, which I used to fight that because I've had companies and organizations, that have 100 plus, multiple employees. But when you go through a few classes and you're teaching them, and if you want people to talk and have conversation and really learn and dive into this topic, I think it's one where a smaller class definitely does pay off. So I do agree to the 30 per class or less is what we end up with.
I can see where that would be beneficial to have a smaller group if you want to encourage the engagement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's interesting because I've had classes where I know people very well in the class because I've obviously hosted some in my own hometown here or in other local communities. And I know people that come to that class and they've had a lot of life happen to them. I mean, I know things that they've been through and they don't say a whole lot during the class, which is fine. That's totally up to them if they want to speak up and share anything or add to the group. And then there are people in the class who, again, I know very well, and I had no idea some of the things that they've been through because this is the first time they feel comfortable sharing it and stuff. It is a very welcoming, great environment, and people just, they take away so much from it. You hear that. I always think about the butterfly effect. When the class is ending and people are wrapping up and heading out the door, I don't always get to hear the stories that come from it. But I just truly imagine it. I know it's happening. When people walk out the door, they're now with their families, they're with their friends, they're with coworkers, they're with people in the community. And I just know how much better off they are as individuals to help make a difference. I mean, that's kind of as silly as it is. I often tell people when they're in the class is really just teaching all of us to be better humans. Like when you notice something or someone is off, have a conversation. You have to be able to gain that confidence in, okay, this seems a little awkward. They seem like they're struggling and I don't know what to say. But if you've been in the class, you do know that the chances of somebody going and getting professional help are multiplied if you suggest they go get help. And I think a lot of people don't realize that. And so then it's looking back, maybe I should have had a conversation with somebody. This class gives so much more confidence and perspective and the tools too, actual tools of what do we do in these situations.
And I think that's so great because you're right. They might notice something's wrong, but what do I do?
Mm-hmm.
It's not my business. What do I do? And you mentioned the butterfly effect, which I was thinking earlier when we were talking about getting people into the training and requiring it for, it should be a training for the oil field or this, these people or those people or whatever. But that butterfly effect, the more people that take this, the less people are gonna need to take this because those little butterfly wings are gonna flap and it's gonna trickle down to their kids, their families, their people they're close to.
I mean, as silly as maybe somebody thinks it sounds, I truly think you almost are raising families different, generations. You're working differently within your workspace. I mean, it's just this, I say it all the time, the world would be a better place if everybody had this training. And I wholeheartedly believe that because you notice things, you treat people differently, you'd maybe slow down in your own life. You'd maybe take time to grab coffee with a friend because you need it, or maybe they could use it. The list goes on and on.
What's your radius, your travel radius? Do you travel anywhere to
That's a
do these
loaded
trainings?
question. Yeah, I like to travel, so I'll go anywhere. What the price is right? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Very good. Okay. Tell us other places. I mean, you mentioned your website, but if people want to follow you and see all the things that you're doing, the beef business, are you still doing the ultra marathon?
Oh, I get asked, I tell that story all the time. Yeah, I've tried it twice. I skipped last year, but it would be in about a month and a half if I decide to do another ultra. So I should probably start running some of my miles.
But if people want to follow along with the adventures of Calli,
Yeah.
tell us where, and we'll link them all in the show notes as we do, but tell us where we can find you.
I mean, if you like Facebook, you can go there. Instagram is probably, I do try to keep my stories updated because I had that conversation with a friend one time. This was many years ago. And I was like, how do I keep educating people about the ag industry and what we do? I think education is such a huge piece, but I like to inspire people as well. Like I think there's so much opportunity for growth. Like people should be learning and growing every single day. But then I also like to entertain people and like keep them laughing and enjoying life. And I said, do people blog still? And she's like, oh gosh, Calli, like, why not just do stories on Instagram? Like you're already doing that a little bit. And this was years ago. And I kind of thought, that's like the modern way of blogging is just doing my stories. So I do kind of try to keep them updated, but you could look up Yellowstone River Beef. You could look up Pioneering Legacy. You could look up Triangle M Ranch and Feedlot. Some of them are a little more quiet because I can't juggle all of that. But yeah, if you just find Calli Thorne on Instagram, you'll get a snippet of a little bit of everything every day.
Your youngest daughter is quite the character in your story.
I hear that often, even when I travel. And she keeps the masses entertained, which I always say, if you guys only lived life with her every day, that is the tiny little snippet that I often share. In fact, we were gone last week for 3 days. Tylee and I was speaking at the state FFA convention here in North Dakota. We came home and Lainey, my little one, who's 7, she proudly told me, she said, I've been wearing this outfit. This is day number 4 now that I've been wearing it. And I'm like, what? I'm like, so don't you think, right? This is the perspective thoughts. My thought that I said to her, I'm like, so don't you think it's time to change your clothes? And her thought, as she told me, she's like, no, I really love it. So I'm going to keep wearing it. And it's like, less laundry for me, I guess. 2 different thoughts going on there.
But so relatable. I have a couple of kids they like to get all the use out of the clothes.
That and CJ took her one day too, which he often does, but he had her the whole day and they were running errands and moving cattle and doing all sorts of things. And he said to me, he's like, do you know how much she talks? I'm like, are you kidding me? I know she talks nonstop. And he's like, I just probably haven't had her with me for an entire day lately. And yeah, he got an earful.
That's awesome. Okay, well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing with us what you do for the mental health space.
You're welcome. I'm hoping, somebody hears it and maybe just hearing this will make a difference too on just learning more about it and understanding it. So,
all right. Well, we will wrap it up. And with that, until next time, draw good movement. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'm so grateful for you. If you found value in this episode, I'd love for you to share with others who might also benefit from tuning in. Share by word of mouth, send it in a text, take a screenshot and post it on social media, or share however you prefer. And if you haven't already, hit the follow or subscribe button so you never miss an episode. Until next time, draw good movement.